There are moments in life when a single sentence can awaken something deep within us. Maybe you've felt it before. Those words that once spoken send shivers down your spine, as if a silent part of your soul suddenly screamed in warning. It's not just intuition, it's perception. They are hidden signals within language that reveal the presence of manipulation. And let me tell you this, once you learn to recognize them, you'll never be able to ignore them again. For many, manipulation feels like something distant, almost cinematic. People think it shows up in grand gestures, theatrical acts, or extreme situations. But the truth is far more subtle and far more dangerous. Manipulators don't just act with behaviors, they shape their victims with carefully chosen words. And that's where the real danger lies. Simple phrases, seemingly innocent, but carrying an invisible poison. Over years of observing the human psyche, I noticed that manipulators follow patterns. It's not just a matter of chance or personal creativity. There's a repetition, almost as if they were following a hidden script, consciously or unconsciously. These phrases haven't changed throughout history. They're like old masks, still being worn generation after generation. I remember one case that illustrates this perfectly. David, an educated and sensitive man, walked into my office in tears. After 6 years in a relationship, he had just discovered that his partner had been manipulating him from the very beginning. He asked me, how could I have ignored all the signs? How didn't I see it? His pain was real, but the answer wasn't in his naivety. The answer was in the invisible strategies that held him captive for so long. His partner didn't need to yell, threaten, or use violence. All she had to do was repeat certain phrases at critical moments, and David, like so many others, gave in. I identified these phrases decades ago, and the most disturbing part is this. They are still being used today, maybe even by someone close to you, maybe by someone you trust, maybe by someone you love. They hide in plain sight, disguised in everyday conversations. But once you learn to recognize them, the manipulation reveals itself right before your eyes. Here's something crucial. Learning to spot these signals is like turning on a light in a dark room. Once you see them, there's no going back. The world will never look the same. You'll begin noticing patterns, hearing repetitions, and realizing that behind certain words lies a hidden intention, and this awareness will forever change the way you relate to others. But before I reveal the 5 phrases that are, in my view, the clearest signs of manipulation, we need to understand what manipulation really is. Manipulation isn't just about convincing someone. After all, we all try to influence each other to some degree. What separates manipulation from healthy influence is this: the complete disregard for the other person's freedom. Manipulators don't want dialogue, they don't seek balance, they want control. And their sharpest weapon is language. Many believe communication happens only through words, but studies show that most communication is non-verbal, facial expressions, gestures, silences. And yet manipulators are masters at using the mere 7% that belongs to words. They wield that small fraction like a surgical weapon. Each chosen word is like a key, unlocking doors in someone else's unconscious. I also recall Sarah, a bright and determined young woman who kept falling into toxic relationships. The strange thing was this: when she looked back at her experiences, she realized something terrifying. Different partners, at different stages of her life, had used the exact same phrases right before their most harmful behaviors. It was as if they had all read the same manual, and in a way they had. The manual of the human psyche, which repeats itself through universal patterns. That's why, as you listen to me now, I want you to awaken to something essential. Manipulation isn't just bad luck or cruel fate, it's the result of predictable patterns that can be identified, studied, and disarmed. When you recognize the manipulator's phrases, you disarm them. You take away the only weapon that truly matters, the power to invade your mind. So here's my invitation. As we continue this journey together, keep your mind open and attentive. What you learn here won't just be theory. It will become a lens through which you start to see your relationships differently. You may discover signs that were always right in front of you. You may finally understand why certain people made you uneasy, even when they smiled. And if this awakening resonates with you, I want you to join us on the Unshakable Mind channel. This space exists to deepen reflections that transform, that open paths, and that free you from the invisible prison of manipulation. And right now, I want you to write a simple but powerful phrase in the comments. I choose to see the truth. That decision alone begins your journey. Get ready, because in the next moments, you'll discover the 5 phrases that, without a doubt, reveal when someone is trying to manipulate you. But there is a way out. When you recognize the process, you break the spell. When you name the shadow, it loses strength. That's the first step to reclaiming control over your life, and that's why this journey matters so much. Here, on Unshakable Mind, you're learning to see what most people ignore, and this awakening is liberating. If this reflection resonates with you, I want you to write in the comments a phrase that marks your decision. I no longer carry what isn't mine. This simple declaration carries immense power because it symbolizes the breaking of the invisible game of manipulation. And stay alert, because as we move forward, I will reveal the clearest signs of manipulative language, so you'll never again be caught off guard. We live in a time when we are more vulnerable than ever to the ancient patterns of manipulation. That doesn't mean these patterns are new. On the contrary, they've been with us since the dawn of humanity. What changes today is that, faced with the speed of life, the superficiality of relationships, and the fragility of our emotional defenses, they find even more fertile ground. And this is where my vision of the human psyche becomes essential. Many people believe manipulators always act consciously, like cold strategists planning every move. But the reality is far more complex. Often, manipulators are not fully aware of what they're doing. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, "Today I will manipulate someone." What actually happens is that rejected parts of their own personality, what I call the shadow, begin to act on their own. These forgotten, denied aspects find a way to express themselves, and very often the way they surface is through manipulation. Here's the detail that most people miss. Manipulation doesn't always come from conscious malice. It can be born from what the manipulator refuses to see in themselves. To them, their tactics feel natural, even justifiable. That's why, so often, manipulators won't even admit they are manipulating. They convince themselves they're simply being honest or just saying what they think. But in truth, they are projecting onto you what they cannot handle within themselves. And here we arrive at the crucial point of this journey. The 5 phrases I'm about to share work like psychological X-rays. They expose, almost instantly, the presence of manipulation. Even if the manipulator has been around you for years, even if they hide in plain sight. These phrases are like flashlights that illuminate the shadow. The first one is very common. It sounds harmless, but it hides a subtle trap. The phrase is, "I'm just being honest with you." How many times have you heard this? Maybe from a partner, a co-worker, a friend, or even a family. Remember, on the surface it sounds like a virtue, as if the other person is placing themselves on a higher moral ground of sincerity. But in reality, it's a dangerous strategy. The manipulator uses it to disguise their aggression, to dress their attack in the mask of honesty. Here's how it works. By saying, "I'm just being honest," the manipulator creates an invisible barrier. They place you in a dilemma. If you accept their words, you're hit by their judgment with no chance to respond. If you push back, you appear to be rejecting honesty itself. This is what we call a double bind. No matter what you do, you're put in a position of weakness. But what's happening behind this is even deeper. This so-called honesty is nothing more than a projection of the manipulator's own insecurities. They dump onto you what they cannot handle in themselves. And to protect themselves from being challenged, they dress their attack in the disguise of virtue. It's as if they were saying, "I get to judge." But you can't be upset because I'm just being truthful. Now I want you to reflect. When someone uses this phrase with you, ask yourself, is what follows truly compassionate, constructive feedback meant for your growth? Or is it just a veiled criticism, an unsolicited judgment, a hidden blow disguised as honesty? This simple awareness can free you from countless traps, because at the core, it's not the phrase itself that wounds you, but the hidden weight it carries. And once you recognize that pattern, you won't fall so easily into the net. So here's your next commitment. Write in the comments, "I choose to recognize the masks of manipulation." This phrase is a symbol, a pact with yourself that you will no longer accept disguised aggression in the name of supposed sincerity. And stay with me, because in the next step of this journey, we'll uncover another phrase, one that's even more dangerous, a strategy that traps countless people in relationships of emotional dependence. And once you hear it, you'll have the clarity to never fall for that trap again. When someone offers you genuine criticism, even if it's harsh, you might feel discomfort at first, but you can still sense the respect in how it's delivered. Authentic honesty never destroys. It guides, and that's the fundamental difference. There's an invisible line between what frees you and what imprisons you. The manipulator, however, isn't satisfied with just distorting the virtue of sincerity. They go further. Attacking something much deeper, your very perception of reality. And here we find the second phrase, one of the most cruel and corrosive, "you're overreacting." At first glance, it may seem like just an opinion, but the psychological impact of this phrase is devastating, because it doesn't attack what you did or what you said. It attacks the legitimacy of your inner experience itself. This is the very strategy that much later became known as gaslighting, and I had already identified it in my observations as a direct assault on the unconscious. Listen, your emotions are not a mistake, they are messengers. Each emotion carries a vital message from your unconscious about what you are living through. When someone tells you that you're overreacting, they don't just dismiss what you feel, they cut off the bridge connecting you to your inner guidance system. It's like ripping the compass from your hands in the middle of a storm. The most sinister part of this phrase is the reversal. It creates. Suddenly, the problem is no longer the manipulator's behavior, but your reaction to it. The entire responsibility gets shifted onto you. This is a classic example of what I called projection. The manipulator cannot deal with their own emotions, so they place them on your shoulders. They project onto you their own incapacity, and in doing so, they strip away the legitimacy of your pain. Think back to the last time someone told you that you were overreacting. What happened next? You probably started doubting yourself, questioning whether you really were reacting out of proportion. That's the effect of manipulation. It corrodes your self-trust from the inside out. But I want you to hold on to this truth. Healthy people do not devalue your emotions. They might disagree with your interpretation, they might offer another perspective, but they will never attack your right to feel. When someone tries to silence your emotions under the excuse of exaggeration, they are revealing more about themselves than about you. This phrase, "you're overreacting," is nothing but a mask covering a painful reality. The manipulator fears the power of emotions, and unable to handle their own, they try to disarm yours. So the next time you hear this phrase, pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What do I need to learn from it? That simple question already breaks the spell, because the moment you reclaim your right to feel, you free yourself from the invisible prison the manipulator tries to impose. And now, as we move forward, we step into an even more delicate territory, what I called the hidden contracts. These are situations where seemingly generous gestures turn into disguised weapons. The manipulator offers something, but hidden between the lines is an unspoken debt, an emotional burden that traps you. This is the essence of the third phrase, and once you hear it, you'll see that behind the kind gesture lies a carefully laid trap. Before we continue, I want to invite you to make a decision. Write in the comments as a pact with yourself. I will no longer allow anyone to invalidate my emotions. This simple declaration works like a shield, protecting what is most sacred within you, your inner truth. And stay with me, because the next step reveals one of the subtlest forms of psychological control, manipulation disguised as generosity. There is a type of manipulation that looks like generosity, but in truth, it's an invisible prison. In my studies, I called it the martyr complex. It's a subtle tactic where someone keeps a secret record of their own good deeds, almost like emotional bookkeeping. This record isn't spoken, but it becomes a currency to buy your obedience and undermine your freedom. True generosity asks for nothing in return. When someone gives from the heart, kindness is complete in itself. But notice what happens when someone repeatedly reminds you of everything they've done. For you, suddenly the gesture that once looked altruistic reveals itself as a hidden contract. It wasn't a gift at all. It was a trap. The moment kindness is turned into an argument, it stops being kindness. Because behind the appearance of altruism lies an invisible demand, a debt you never agreed to, but which the manipulator now expects you to pay with your autonomy. This behavior exposes an immature, unconscious view of human relationships. Healthy relationships are not based on bookkeeping. They thrive on natural reciprocity, on the free flow of giving and receiving. But for the manipulator, every gesture comes with an unspoken invoice. And when you least expect it, that invoice is presented. Here lies the poison. The manipulator transforms your freedom into currency. They're essentially saying, I did this for you, therefore you owe me something. And that something is always your obedience, your agreement, your submission. But the manipulation doesn't stop there. After using the past as a weapon, it shifts into an even more dangerous territory, the manipulation of responsibility itself. And here we arrive at the fourth phrase, one that imprisons not just your actions, but also your emotions. The phrase goes like this: you made me feel this way, or you forced me to act like this. Look closely at the depth of this trap. What's happening here is a total transfer of responsibility. The manipulator refuses to acknowledge that their emotions and choices come from their own psyche, their history, their unconscious patterns. Instead, they place the weight of their inner world on your shoulders. But here's the truth that many don't understand, and that I discovered through my observations. No one can make us feel anything. Our emotions are not mechanical reactions to external stimuli. They are created by the way our mind interprets what we experience. They are shaped by our wounds, our memories, by what remains hidden in the shadow. So when someone says, you made me feel this way, what they're revealing is not your guilt, but their own psychological immaturity. It's an ego still underdeveloped, unable to take responsibility for its own inner life. But there's something even more dangerous. This phrase is not just a confession of immaturity, it's a deliberate attempt at control. Because the moment you accept this transfer of responsibility, you begin to feel like you must carry the other person's emotional state. It's as if you suddenly became the guardian of their happiness or their anger. That is an impossible burden. No human being can live carrying the emotions of another. If you fall into this trap, you'll live in a constant state of guilt and obligation, always on guard, always measuring every word and gesture, afraid of provoking a reaction. But hear this, their reaction belongs to them, not to you. So right now, I want you to make a clear choice within yourself. Write in the comments, I will not carry emotional responsibilities that aren't mine. This decision is liberating because it marks a break with one of the most cruel and exhausting manipulations. And get ready, because there's more. The fifth phrase I'm about to reveal ties everything together and exposes once and for all the very heart of manipulation. Once you recognize it, you'll be able to see not only the manipulators around you, but also the hidden patterns you may have unknowingly allowed to repeat in your life. There is a form of manipulation that strikes at the most vulnerable point in all of us, our need to love and be loved. And here, manipulation reveals itself in its purest, cruelest, and most dangerous form. The final phrase, perhaps the most devastating of them all, is this: if you really loved me, you would. At first glance, it seems like just a request. But in reality, this phrase is a psychological trap with an extremely destructive power. In 2023, a study conducted at Stanford University analyzed more than 3,000 cases of domestic violence. The result was alarming. This phrase appeared in 91% of victims' testimonies. This shows us that it is not a detail, but a repeated pattern in situations of emotional and psychological abuse all over the world. Carl Jung had already intuited this mechanism decades earlier when he described what he called emotional blackmail. Unlike other forms of manipulation, this one doesn't just attack your emotions or your perception of reality. It attacks your identity, your very essence, your autonomy. Here's how it works. When someone says, "If you really loved me," the manipulator is hijacking the very meaning of love. They're not asking for affection, closeness, or understanding. They're demanding submission. What should be a genuine bond becomes a currency of control. The real danger of this phrase lies in the impossible choice it creates. You only have two options: sacrifice your boundaries, your integrity, your freedom, all in the name of proving your love, or keep your boundaries and be accused of not truly loving. Do you see how insidious this dynamic is? Suddenly, love stops being a space of connection and becomes a court of judgment. Your virtue turns into your prison. Jung understood this as a direct attack on the process of individuation, the essential path for each person to become whole, integrated, and free. When someone uses this phrase against you, they're not asking for love. They're demanding that you deny yourself, that you renounce yourself to fit into their mold. That is not love, that is submission. Now I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and think about the conversations you've had just this past week. How many times did you hear phrases like this? Who did they come from? And most importantly, how did you respond? Here's the transformative revelation. Manipulation is not random. It's a language. Just like French or Spanish, it has words, phrases, and specific patterns. And just like any a language, you can learn to understand it. Once you recognize this psychological language, it loses its power. No one can use it against you without you immediately noticing. You begin to see beyond the words, as if you had X-ray vision into the human mind. And that's exactly what Jung grasped. These patterns are not just isolated behaviors, but part of a symbolic vocabulary designed to bypass your conscious mind and strike directly at your unconscious. Now imagine walking through life with this vision. Imagine never being blindsided by these phrases again, because you already know what they mean, where they come from, and what the intention is behind them. That's the power you're gaining by learning to identify these 5 patterns. And in the next part, I'll show you how to turn this knowledge into real protection, so none of these manipulations can ever imprison you again. There is a decisive moment between hearing and being affected. A tiny, almost invisible space where consciousness can intervene and disarm everything the manipulator intends to do. When you learn to read not just the words, but the hidden intentions, something changes radically inside you. It's like removing a blindfold. Suddenly, the outlines of the world become clear, and you see the mechanism behind the illusion. I've often used this image. It's like taking the red pill. The truth stings, but it sets you free. But don't be mistaken. It's not enough to merely recognize the manipulative phrase. What truly transforms your life is what happens in your body and mind at the exact moment you identify it. Confusion dissolves into clarity. Insecurity gives way to calm confidence. And most importantly, the power that seemed to slip through your hands returns to its rightful place. You, Let me share something few would expect to hear from me. Even after studying the human soul for so many years, I've had moments where I was touched by patterns I didn't immediately recognize. The shadow, when it operates, is cunning and often disguises itself as reason. That's when I realized I needed a practical protocol, something that could be applied in the moment, restoring autonomy without turning confrontation into war. What I call here Jung's protocol are simple, direct and powerful steps. You can apply them in 5 minutes or less, and they work because they act on 3 levels: cognitive, physical, and communicational. Step 1. Hold the tension of opposites. When you hear one of these manipulative phrases, whether it's "I'm just being honest," "You're overreacting," or "If you really loved me," don't attack back and don't withdraw into silence. Instead, use a simple technique. Reflect the statement back in a neutral way. Say calmly and firmly, "You said B," repeat exactly what they said. "Can I think about that?" By repeating it, you do 2 powerful things. You interrupt the automatic flow of manipulation and force the speaker to hear their own words, as if they were spoken by someone else. This micro-interruption breaks the script the manipulator expects you to follow: the immediate reaction, the defensive emotion, the guilt. And by asking to think, you reclaim the time they tried to steal. Step 2. Engage the wisdom of the body. The mind can be deceived, but the body rarely lies. It holds ancestral memories and somatic responses that signal danger before we even process the words. When you feel that inner storm, the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the shallow breath, stop. Place your hand on your chest. Inhale slowly and deeply through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 2. Exhale gently for 6. Notice where the tension sits. Silently ask yourself, what is my body telling me right now? These sensations are your psychological immune system. Recognizing them is like turning on a lighthouse within. You realize you don't have to defend everything, agree with everything, or carry someone else's pain. The body confirms what your awareness is beginning to grasp. Step 3. Use a boundary phrase with precision. Some words work like a respectful but decisive barrier. When manipulation persists, say slowly, with calm authority, "I need to consider what you said. Let's pause this conversation." This phrase is radically effective because it doesn't accuse, minimize, or apologize. It sets a clear boundary. You will not be rushed, forced, or coerced. By pausing, you preserve your emotional integrity and invite the other to take responsibility for what they said. If the manipulator pushes after the pause, you have every right to repeat your stance or remove yourself from the interaction. Practical complement, anchoring and recording. After the conversation ends, take a mental or written note of what happened, the phrase used, how you reacted, what bodily sensation you noticed, and which action you chose. This creates operative memory. Over time, you'll build a clear repertoire of responses that don't depend on the heat of the moment. And remember, practice requires repetition. Each small victory strengthens your inner resistance. The transformation that comes from this practice is profound. Clarity replaces confusion. Confidence replaces doubt. Your power returns to where it always belonged, within you. And whenever you need to, repeat to yourself and write in the comments, the decision you now claim: I reclaim my power. I will not be a prisoner of manipulation. This simple phrase is a hack that sharpens your awareness. If you've found this content useful, if you want to deepen this awareness with more practical exercises and guided examples, join us at Unshakable Mind, where we continue this journey together with care and courage. In the next part, we'll turn this awareness into a daily practice of boundaries and self-love, so that individuation, the process of becoming whole and authentic, can flourish without interference. Stay with me. When I first used these techniques, I noticed something revealing. The manipulator in my life reacted with fury. That reaction, in truth, was the clearest confession he could have given, because refusing to be manipulated immediately exposes the hidden truth behind the words. It's like pulling the mask off an actor in the middle of the play. Suddenly, the performance loses all its power. Manipulation always thrives in two conditions: confusion and urgency. It needs you to have no time to reflect, to feel pressured to respond, to lose touch with your own center. That's why every time you create clarity, pause, slow down, and reclaim your time, the power of manipulation dissolves. The manipulator may get angry, may accuse, may try to pressure you, but they've already lost their main weapon: control over your mind. But there's something even deeper that many people don't realize. Manipulation is not only an attempt to control others, it is, above all, an unconscious attempt to avoid oneself. When someone manipulates, they are running from their own vulnerability, their insecurities, and the fears they cannot face. In other words, the manipulator is not only deceiving you, they are deceiving themselves. That's why the greatest protection against manipulation doesn't lie only in external techniques, but in self-knowledge. The more intimate you are with your own truth, the less room there is for anyone to distort that truth within you. Self-knowledge creates deep roots, and when we are rooted, no storm from outside can pull us out of the ground. As we arrive at the end of this part of the journey, I want you to reflect on one essential truth. The 5 phrases that expose manipulators are not just words. They are visible symptoms of an invisible psychological virus I identified long before modern psychology gave it a name. And perhaps what surprised me most when I saw this pattern wasn't its existence, but its frequency. I discovered that people I deeply respected, friends, partners, colleagues, sometimes used these phrases with me, often without even realizing it. It's painful to recognize, but also liberating, because recognition is always the first step to healing. I want you to take part with me right now. Write in the comments, "conscious shadow." That simple act is like declaring to yourself and to others, "I see, I recognize, I choose not to be manipulated." You'll be amazed at how many others share this experience, and this community of awareness strengthens all of us. Manipulators won't disappear from your life overnight. They will keep trying because that's the language they learn to speak. But your vulnerability to them can disappear today, and that changes absolutely everything. And I want you to keep something close to your heart. If this message resonated with you, if you recognize these patterns in your own story, remember this: it was not your fault. Manipulation only works because it's invisible until it becomes conscious. And now, from this moment on, you are no longer blind to it. In the next and final part, I'll guide you to the close of this journey, not just with reflection, but with an invitation to transform this knowledge into a new way of living, freer, truer, and more authentic. Manipulation thrives on naivety precisely because good people don't expect it. Those with open hearts who believe in honesty are the very ones most exposed to these hidden patterns. But now you know, and once knowledge becomes conscious, it turns into strength. Knowing changes everything. What once confused you can now become clarity. What once trapped you can now become freedom. You have, right now, the choice to no longer allow this invisible language to be spoken in your life without you recognizing it. Awareness is the key. I want to ask you something important. Share this video with someone you love, someone who may be silently enduring a toxic relationship or a conversation full of manipulation. For that person, this knowledge may not only be useful, it may be life-changing. It may be the difference between remaining caught in a web of lies or finally seeing the thread that holds the whole illusion together. Sometimes, the greatest gift we give someone is not a ready-made solution, but the light that helps them see their path. And know this journey does not end here. In the next video, I'll reveal what I've called the plan for shadow integration, the process that not only protects you from manipulation, but also frees your own life from unconscious patterns. Shadow integration is the path that leads to true individuation, to the freedom of being whole, authentic, and unshakable. When you walk this path, you don't just become immune to manipulation, you transform every relationship into a space of truth and mutual growth. Until then, keep this powerful reminder in your heart. Your intuition always recognizes the truth, even when your mind tries to convince you otherwise. Intuition is the voice of the wise unconscious, and when you learn to listen to it, it will never betray you. If this content spoke to you today, write in the comments, "I choose to live free." That public declaration is a pact with yourself, a commitment to never again let manipulation imprison you. And before you go, remember, hit the like button, subscribe to Unshakable Mind, and turn on the bell. That way, you won't miss the next chapters of this journey of deep self-knowledge and inner freedom. I am Carl Jung, and I tell you, freedom begins when you recognize the shadow and decide never again to be ruled by it. See you in the next video.